Welcome back to Fantasy Picks Movie Edition. How's it going, guys?
Going good.
All right. Good. Yeah. So, by the way, Fantasy Picks. I've been getting some complaints that Fantasy Picks looks like Fantasy Dicks. The P I have to fix, I guess, because it looks too much like a D, and I think it's the
logo, of course. Yes,
yeah, the logo, and I think it's attracting the wrong people.
Or it could be the right. It could be the right people. You never know.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know, man. I mean, that'll be great.
A P is a D.
Yeah.
So it depends on how you see it. But also, honestly, people, this is Fantasy Picks. As in picking movie edition. Let's get that clear.
Yeah, not Fantasy Dicks. That's, I'm sure, a whole other podcast. And crazy. So this is a conversation today on franchise fatigue. And, with all the franchises that are out there, especially the biggest franchises of them all, which is Star Wars, the MCU, Fast and the Furious, you got Harry Potter, James Bond, which has been around for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So you have quite a few, so we just want to have a small, a bit of a discussion on, where are these things going? You've been hearing a lot of rumors and a lot of news on, are people getting tired of the same movies being seen over and over again? Some of these movies are working, some of them are not. A good example of that, of course, is the MCU, which is basically considered the most famous and the most profitable franchise out there. But before we get into that, let's talk about franchise, the word franchise, because so there are two types of franchise. So there's regular franchise, and according to the internet, a franchise is a type of license that grants a franchisee access to a franchisor's property, business knowledge, process, and trademarks, only allowing the franchisee to sell a product or service under the franchisor's business name. But for film franchise, it's a film series or movie series, also referred to as a film franchise or a movie franchise, is a collection of related films in succession that share the same fictional universe or are marketed as a series. Let's talk about that, because nowadays they call everything a franchise.
Yeah.
And when I was growing up, it was just, hey, man, there's part 1, part 2, and part 3.
Correct. Yeah.
And for us, it was just a film series, and that was it. I consider personally a film franchise. So let's say a good example of that would be the MCU, which is not concentrating on what I would say on a particular set of characters or a event that is going on from one movie to another, right? Mm-hmm. You got different characters. Of course, you got the series, you got games, you got all that stuff. Yes, that's a franchise. Mm-hmm. Star Wars became that, I think, when it did Rogue One.
Not necessarily. I wouldn't say that.
It wasn't that. To me, it wasn't that with 4, 5, and 6. It became that, I would say, once it started doing, like, let's say the
prequels.
Well,
even before the prequels, you had the Ewok movies.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. So you had the Ewok movies and you had the animation. So that I could consider that a franchise.
Yes.
But nowadays they're calling if it has more than one movie, now they're calling it a franchise, which I don't think is a.
Well, it's based upon IP.
Right. Well, but I just don't think it's still the proper terminology. But that's just me. I mean, I don't know what you guys think of that.
Well, franchise, actually, if you think about it too, what else could be a franchise? Disney. Disney is also a franchise with the amusement parks as well, in all different countries. So it's how you market it and how you expand upon it. That is what we're talking about. But in this particular case, I think we're just talking about franchises within movies.
Correct. To me, like I said, a franchise is something that, stems off to different things as opposed to it just being a film series. To me, a film series is like, hey, there's
1, 2, 3 and done.
1, 2, 3 and done. Or like,
Godfather.
Yeah. The Godfather.
Yeah.
If somebody tells me, "Oh, that's a franchise," I'll be like, "No, it's not."
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this. So, so all these studios are really trying to, of course, get their hands on all these different IPs. And I understand. Listen, I mean, it's a money grabber. You had Disney, doing Marvel, and honestly, till this day, the MCU is probably Marvel Studios is probably the most successful studio ever than any other movie out there, with the exception of
James Bond, maybe.
Ant-Man. No, what I was going to say. The exception of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantum Mania.
Oh, okay.
Till this day, Ant-Man has made $473 million out of a $200 million budget. So that is a loss for them, because a $200 million budget, I'm sure, doesn't include the advertisement,
Which
and
takes
marketing.
a lot of toll. Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
so,
yeah, of course.
So this is probably, their first loss out
Failure.
there. Yeah, out there. But
aside from the Eternals.
Well, the Eternals actually made money too. So,
well, this kind of made money. It kind of broke even, if you think about it. If it's 200 million total with promotion, and it made over 400 million, then it kind of broke even.
Yeah. So the Eternals actually had about the same thing, but they actually still, for some reason, they consider it a success. So I would say those two movies. Now, I mean, they have done so far 30 movies, and they had, let's say, 2 failures. Not a bad thing for a movie studio compared to other studios that actually have.
You're forgetting one.
What?
Thor: The Dark World.
Thor: The Dark World actually made money.
That actually made money?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Wasn't as good as a Ragnarok, but I think a lot of people went because the same director who did Ragnarok, they probably flocked there to see that. But then
Thor: The Dark World actually cost 100. They say that it was estimated between 150 to 170 million, but it actually made $644 million. So that actually made its money back, and was profitable. Right. So, but the other ones were $200 million, and they only made $400 million. So yeah, those two were actually failures on that. But that being said, again, you have a studio that's had 2 failures with 30 movies, 31 movies or something like that, compared to other studios who have had a lot more failures.
DC.
And, yeah. Yeah. So DC being one of them. But I guess the question is, I mean, and look, everybody has tried to get IPs. You have Amazon trying to get different IPs also.
Yeah.
You have, of course, Netflix, which, since they lost the Marvel stuff, they're trying to get also their own IPs. So you have all these studios trying to get IPs, and unfortunately, what happens is, in the course of getting those IPs, they get the writers that I still believe are not the right writers for a lot of these things, and that's why I feel like it fails. But that being said, Marvel being the most successful studio of them all, these studios, they knew that they had something very good. They knew that, like, I'll give you a good example. I mean, Friday the 13th, right? Friday the 13th was actually a very successful franchise, in the sense that it didn't cost much. It didn't cost much.
Exactly. It still is.
And it still is. They do make money, even though it's cheesy and, in some case really stupid, but it still makes its money.
Yeah.
Don't knock Jason, okay?
You had the same thing with, the Freddy movies, the Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Yeah.
Right. So we grew up with certain franchises that, they didn't cost us much money to make, but they were still very successful. All of a sudden, I think, of course, Star Wars kind of blew that up to the point where it's like, hey, and then with special effects and everything, things had to be bigger and better all the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are some of the franchises that you guys grew up with that you feel like, they're, because let's be honest, a lot of these franchises are still going on today. It's just, they're just not being very successful at it in some cases.
Something that is just recently becoming a franchise and actually wasn't on the list, Evil Dead. Evil Dead, right? We've got 3 movies. We've got a series that was on cable.
And I think there's another
movie that's coming out really soon. Yeah.
Right.
Evil Dead Rise.
But you also had the reboot too in between that.
Right, the reboot, yeah.
That's
so
right.
It's becoming
actually,
a franchise in and
there's
of
another
itself.
there's another reboot coming, right? Because I know it's like the second one of the second movie of the second reboot or something like that.
It is the second reboot, yes.
Right.
Huh.
Because they did one with a female-centric main character.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was before Ash versus the Evil Dead series that we got on Stars.
Right.
That was long after we got Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness.
Right.
And then we got the reboot. Then we got Ash versus Evil Dead. Now we're getting this new one, Evil Dead Rise. And yeah, it's something to bank on. Sam Raimi is going back to the well.
So here's the thing. I mean, we grew up with these great franchises, and we loved them, and we just thought they were great. But all of a sudden, the studios decide that they're going to overblow these things. So of course, good example of that is Star Wars. So Star Wars, once they got purchased by Disney, they decided to start doing the movies again. So they did, of course, 6, 7, and 8, which, as we all know and we all have seen, while they have made money and were successful, they were not critically the best movies, and they still get shitted upon on that. They have done all these Disney Plus series, and of course The Mandalorian has been very successful. And then you have things like Book of Boba Fett, and then you have what's the other one, Obi-Wan. So some of them have been also criticized, but the problem is that they've oversaturated, I think, so much in a year. And of course, I know that a lot of it had to do with COVID. So once we had COVID come in, a lot of these studios thought, hey, everybody's going to be locked down, so let's just put out as much content out there because they can't go to the movies. Yeah. And of course, they are clamoring and trying to get your attention. They don't want you to go to, Netflix. They want you to go to Disney Plus all the time, or, or HBO Max wants you to do the same thing. So they're releasing all these things, and they're oversaturating the market. Are we to blame for this? So here's the whole thing, because look, studios are out to make a buck, right? And they don't give a shit whether it's a good story or not. But are we to blame for asking for all these things? Because we always want more. But are we?
I believe we are somewhat.
A little bit, just a little bit. The thing is that they capitalize based upon the fandom.
Correct.
And you have to realize too, with a lot of these shows,
the fandom is the one that actually then shits upon things. So look, in Star Wars, the biggest critics are Star Wars fans, right? They always say
Trekkie fans. Trek fans are huge too,
right?
They've been there since day one.
But what I'm saying is, like, you take something like Star Wars as a franchise, and the biggest haters of Star Wars are the biggest fans of Star Wars.
Well, you know what? It's kind of like they're kind of like the domestic abused. It's like they take the domestic abuse and then they go running back. It's like after they're done, it's like, okay, it's like this is still going on. Let me go run back.
No, you're absolutely right.
This thing that you loved that treated you so well at one point, and then it treats you like crap, and yet you still go back.
Still go back. So, but the studio doesn't care. I mean, it gets to the point where it's like, you know what? They're still paying for it, so let's just put out shit. And the one thing I would say is, when Bob Iger came back to Disney, the one thing he said was, that's it. No more putting out fucking, 5 or 6 projects per year. Now it's just going to be 1 or 2 projects per year.
Which makes more sense.
Let's be honest. Star Wars was one of those things that when we had the first 3 movies, that's all we had. Right. And so we would grasp for anything. And it took a long time to try to get episodes 1, 2, and 3. And after that, we just thought, okay, that is it. No more. It is done. And the, number 6 comes out. And of course, it becomes one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Was it a great movie? It was okay, but it wasn't, redundant. But we were so desperate for Star Wars content that, of course, we flocked the theaters. But now that we all of a sudden in 1 year, we got a shitload of Star Wars stuff, it no longer becomes nostalgic anymore. No. And, if you get too much of one thing, the nostalgia is not there anymore.
Yes,
and so,
I agree.
Right. Yeah. So my whole thing is like, why is it that, a lot of people saying there's a lot of franchise fatigue, maybe we're getting too much of things. And with Star Wars, I feel like maybe it is. Maybe it's the same thing with, the MCU. Because let's look, James Bond, they release a James Bond every 2 to 3 years, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. And that shit's been going on since what? The 60s, the
60s.
early
60s.
60s.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But at least they make us miss it. At least it's like, shit, we haven't had a James Bond movie like in
like 3-5 years between.
right.
Yeah.
So we haven't had a James Bond like in 3 years or whatever it is, or 5 years. And then when it comes out, we're all flocking to the theater to go see James Bond. Right.
Very much like my favorite. I'm a huge fan, and everybody who knows me, I'm a kaiju fan. Godzilla. Godzilla's been around for over, like, we're getting there.
70 years almost.
70 years of Godzilla.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Toho will actually shut down its studio every once in a while. Then they lent it out to America and gave its IP over to there so that way they could do something. They saw that they kind of ruined it with Godzilla 98. And then they took over literally within 2 years to do Godzilla 2000. They did a number of movies after that. And then it went to Legendary. And then Legendary did something that nobody thought they could do, which was create a whole monsterverse, which Toho is like backing now. And now they're taking a little bit of time because of the last movie that didn't do so well, which was Kong versus Godzilla, or Godzilla versus Kong. I forget what you would call it.
Well, but you got to remember that was more because, again, that was that whole pandemic thing. And all of a sudden you had HBO Max. Who was that? I forgot what studio it was, but all of a sudden they decided they were going to release everything.
I think it's still Legendary.
But even though it's Legendary, like they're still under a bigger umbrella.
Umbrella.
Right. So, but everything was going to be released. That was the big debacle with like HBO Max, where like all of a sudden the studios decided that they were going to release everything on streaming instead of actually releasing it in theaters. And you had all these small studios. All of a sudden they wanted to, sue.
Yeah, I remember that.
HBO Max and all this stuff. So, but yeah, you have something like, let's say, like Mark just said, the Godzilla franchise, they put some good money into it. The last one, of course, Godzilla versus Kong was kind of a little, I would say, stupid.
Well,
but still entertaining.
It perceived basically what it did in the 60s and 70s when the original Kong versus Godzilla happened.
So, but so you have some good franchises out there. Again, my problem with it is if you put way too much out there and you oversaturate the market with it, people are just going to be like, that's it. I'm kind of done with this. Like, I'll be honest with you. I never thought that I would actually say that I could actually take a break from Star Wars and the MCU, because when the MCU,
it just basically becomes like a TV show that you see in the movie theater. That's basically it. It's like a new episode every week or 2 weeks
exactly. And as a matter of fact, if you see the model that TV shows are now doing, instead of doing 24 episodes,
they do 10
of a
now.
show. Now they just do 10, right?
10 to 16, depending on.
They raise the budget and they cut it down in amount of episodes.
Correct.
But
and
that's
improves
also
the writing.
Yeah,
that's also another part of something that we're not even considering, is how many really good franchises are actually on those streaming networks. So we're talking about like Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
If you go for the first like 7 seasons, granted season 8 was a shit show.
Yeah.
But the first 7 seasons of Game of Thrones, it's unstoppable. You know what I mean? You're just like every week you were on there going, and it's fantastic. And now we've got The Boys, but we still haven't had a bad season of The Boys yet. You know what I mean? Like it might be slow, but it's still good.
Right. And but we're only getting about 10 episodes as opposed to, hey, the normal 25 episodes, where when you like, look, I'll give you an example, like X-Files, right? I was huge X-Files fan.
I still am.
And and I still am. But the thing is that the X-Files has, of course, their ongoing arc throughout all those seasons. But then they have
2 movies.
Right. And they have the filler, but they have those filler episodes, right? And those filler episodes, of course, we will watch them because, hey, it was still X-Files and stuff like that. But at some point, if you don't hit the mark, even with the overall, with the whole overall story, you start to get people, drop the shows. So these companies have learned, and these studios have learned, hey, we grab them for 10 episodes, right? So the least amount of episodes, it makes people want more, right? So what do? They'll do 10 episodes. They come out. How many times have we seen that here they'll release 4 episodes?
Yep.
Right? One each week. And then all of a sudden there's a break for another month. Yeah, that's like a break for a month or two. And then the other 4 episodes will come out, and boom, the season is done. And now we're waiting an entire year, sometimes 2 years.
Yeah.
For something. Right.
Yeah.
But so I think it's, again, the whole thing where, if you give us way too much, we're just going to go somewhere else.
Well, I think also, I think we're starting to see the effect of this fatigue also. I mean, you mentioned The Mandalorian. It was a great show and everything, but a lot of people don't know. I just read this. It's dropped by nearly 40%.
Oh, yes,
correct.
In when season 3 came out, and it's continuing to drop. And now there's talk that the main character in The Mandalorian, what's his name?
Din
Djarin will be leaving the show and be taken over by Katie Sackhoff's character. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've been hearing. So,
well, based upon the writing of what we're starting to see within this season 3, I wouldn't be surprised for the fact that if you look at it, Pedro Pascal has taken up yet another role in another show on HBO Max.
Very successful show.
Last of Us, which is very successful. He is not wearing a mask. He's not just giving his voice.
Yeah, but you know what? Pedro Pascal has always said, you know what? I'll do The Mandalorian forever, even if I'm under a mask, because he loves the character so much.
Correct. Yeah.
But
all he's doing is doing voiceovers.
But
there's only 2.
Yeah. But you touch upon something, which is the writing. And the problem, I think the biggest problem right now that's going on is the fact that they're getting writers that do not know the IP. They don't know the IP very well. They're like, listen, I read up on this. I think I have an idea of what to, what to do, or, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing. And now they deviate from the actual IP itself. That's what happened with The Witcher. And that's why Henry Cavill left, because the writers were not respecting the IP. They wanted to take it to a different direction. Correct. So I also feel like, especially when it comes to Star Wars, when it comes to maybe some of the MCU stuff, I feel like some of that writing is being done by people who really, really do not respect what years, if not decades, it took to make these things successful. They think they could make it successful with one movie, and boom, I didn't make it successful, or hey, I did. I'm moving on to something else, right?
Yeah.
So that to me is just kind of like, so that's why I really feel that, for me, I think there is something of franchise fatigue, but
you can still make a franchise better. Honestly, let's talk about this. All right. Now, we talked about Trek. And the thing about that, right now we're in the midst of a possible writer strike that's coming up again.
Right.
Which kind of ended a lot of shows that I loved, one of which was Heroes. They, the last season was shit. It was terrible. But the first 2 or 3 at that point were great, in my opinion. It was done very well. And then towards the end, it went down the toilet. And then, and it was during the writer's strike. Now, if you think about Trek, Trek's been around for decades. And what they had done towards the end of Next Generation and DS9 has gotten a lot of the fans to come in with their own scripts. The best people that you could have,
but they stopped that.
They did stop that, but
they stopped that.
The best part would be to have those people who are true fans and know the IP write for the IP, not people who are hired hands who don't understand the IP.
Right. But they stopped that because of they stopped that because of the Writers Guild and all that stuff, saying no, you have to be part of the Writers Guild in order for you to actually have, somebody write for a show. You're grabbing a fan to do it, and he's not part of the Writers Guild, and now you're going outside the Writers Guild or something like that.
Which sucks, because honestly, a lot of the Writers Guild shows just how much unoriginal that they are. and they are not following the IP.
Extremely unoriginal. I mean, listen, like I said, it only lasts until the next bad sequel becomes a hit. That's how I see it, because while things are not great, of course, we'll criticize the crap out of it. But all of a sudden you'll get a good hit, and next thing you know, oh, okay, they're back, and so-and-so is back now, and all these things, until now it fails again. So here's my question to you guys. I mean, because I know that they have been franchises that started good and they just never been able to take off after that. So
yeah, Planet of the Apes was one of the first to go at that point. It started out very well with the first 3 to 4 movies. Beyond that, it went to cartoon, went to a TV series, and then a movie that just reused and rehashed. Now, mind you,
the movies were very successful, though.
The movies were very successful.
It depends on which movie you're talking about.
What movies are you talking
about? The one with Mark Wahlberg.
I'm talking about the original Frank. I'm talking about the original Frank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you got Charlton Heston. You had the sequel. Then you had the third. By the fourth, the writing was a little bit lacking. Come after that, the other movies, terrible. They were literally rehashing certain scenes, reusing certain scenes. And on top of that, the storyline was kind of dwindling. And then eventually they wound up going to a TV series, cartoon series, and just draining the IP, as it were, by itself, to the point where they were dragging it into the mud.
Well, there's only so much you could do about fucking apes, man. I mean, that's why, when they redid the entire series, there was only 3 movies? 3 very good movies. And you know what?
3 very good movies.
And they're thinking of doing a 4th, but here's the whole thing. 3 movies, and that was it. And they told a great story behind those 3 movies, and they left it at that. They didn't go out and say all of a sudden, hey, let's explore. You know what? Instead of exploring Caesar, now let's explore this little ape over here and his little, adventures that he did. Or let's explore so-and-so who had a romance, or whatever bullshit they come out with. Well, they had 3 great...
Even with the sequels or the reboot that they did with Andy Serkis as the lead role. They were done very well. The first 2 done very well. By the third, they kind of lost its track and lost its way.
The third was still great.
It was still great in a sense. It gave sense of character and story, but they kind of at that point drained it to they lost a lot of their audience. And that's the problem. They realized that they should have wrapped it up within 2, and they decided to do a
2
third.
2 was left open. So they had to put in 3. Open. Right. The thing is that movie itself, while probably it wasn't as successful as I think the second one was even more successful than the first. I mean, I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
But at least it wrapped up the story with 3 movies. They didn't go ahead and stretch it out to fucking 10 movies. Yeah. Where now
There's still talks about a new movie too, by the way.
And I heard about that, which is like, all right, we'll wait to see how that is. But what I was saying is there are some movies out there that they start out good, and for some reason they just can't take off. So a perfect example of that, right? The Terminator. Terminator was a great movie, low budget movie, but it caught on. Then you have James Cameron do Terminator 2, fantastic. From that point on,
just fell apart.
It just fell apart. They were never able to actually make that franchise any better. Why? Because you couldn't capture that magic. And regardless of how many times you went into that world, because they did the Sarah Connor Chronicle, that was, it was an okay show. Yeah, but it got canceled. Let's be honest.
Let's be real. We all watched for Summer Glau. I mean, come on.
Of course.
No, I watched for Cersei herself.
Oh yeah,
she was Sarah Connor.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm Team Summer all the way.
But it's just a movie that
I like Summer Glau too.
Yeah, but it's a movie that just they couldn't capture that magic of the first movie. Granted that James Cameron then all of a sudden did something so far out with the second one. And let's be honest, look, it was Terminator's one of them, right? The other one is Alien. When you look at Alien, the first movie Alien terrified the shit out of us. It was such an amazing concept. James Cameron again, maybe we could blame James Cameron for this. But James Cameron again comes in with a second movie, makes it phenomenal. And then every movie after that just couldn't capture that magic. Why? Because it was already done. What else can you do about fucking aliens, xenomorphs that just, it's just there. So,
all right, I have to stop you there. I'm a Cameron fan.
Yeah.
And there was a third script that was in the works. And it did continue on after the second movie and made more sense. And it took the aliens to Earth as the ship crashed. It was never created.
But it was never done. That's what I'm saying.
It was never done. It was only done, guess what? In comic book form up until about 2 or 3 years ago.
A lot of things were done in comic book form that were great. But they just, when they put it on film, it sucks. But the whole thing is, again, they were never able to capture that. They try to do, the other alien where now all of a sudden, Ripley's some kind of, hybrid or clone.
Of a clone. Right.
Yeah. Let's be honest. The one. What is it? The ones
Winona Ryder was in it as well.
There was which one you said?
Winona Ryder.
No, I was talking about the other series that was kind of rebooted by Prometheus.
Right.
So
that's the prequel series.
Ridley Scott came back for that one.
Ridley Scott came back for that, but it never captured that, that amazing
Prometheus
moment.
did well, but the Covenant didn't do well at all.
It
for
did
the fact that it.
But it did well.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't what the first one and second one were.
It wasn't what the fans wanted, literally.
It was just one of those things where it just kind of died a small, slow death. One of the biggest ones that only had one movie, and I would say this, one movie that worked and every other movie after that just sucked was Predator. Predator had an amazing story. And granted that it was an interesting character. Where did this character come from? What was, but it's still a kind of two-dimensional character. It's a fucking hunter, and that is it. Right?
Yeah.
And it's just this alien, and that is it. And every movie after that, they try to do something where it just didn't work. It was just like, oh, okay, that was just.
Yeah, the second one, they tried too hard. They got Danny Glover. Let's put Lethal Weapon with Predator in this, and I'm too old for this shit. Let's get Bill Paxton. Let's kill him again in another kind of alien style movie. And on top of that, it gave great action, gave everything that you would want from a Predator film.
Right.
But in modern day, it kind of lost itself, and that's why they never did a Predator after that.
And let me tell you, even the reboots or whatever, even when they try to make Alien and Predator together, let me tell you, Dark Horse Comics did a phenomenal, series
amazing
on that.
Job.
First one, right? Yeah. The Ryushi series.
They couldn't capture that in a film. So these are like two franchises that they had, I would say, one hit or two hit wonders, and that was it. Part
of that story is there, though. You know what I mean? The whole Ryushi thing is in Aliens versus Predator, that first one.
Right.
There are parts of that movie that they used, or parts of the story that they used.
But the problem is, the problem is, Frank, that, it's like you have writers that's like, well, I'll take a little bit of it. The problem is that when you have a writer wants to, of course, put their own spin on things because they want to make a name for themselves. I completely understand that. But when you're grabbing a certain kind of IP, and if the story worked and people loved what they saw, then don't fucking go ahead and change it. They'll go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of this, and then I'm just going to create my own thing. Well, guess what? What you made sucks. So
but that's the thing, right? They have no emotional investment in it. They don't care about the series. They're just doing it for a paycheck.
They're doing it for a paycheck, and they're just moving on to the next, to the next thing. And for them, it's like, listen,
Predator basically just turned into who can we get Predator fight? That's basically what it turned into. It's like let's versus this versus that. It was not really story. It's just basically it's almost like the cool factor. Who can they fight? And that's about it, without even writing a story behind it. When you should actually come up with the story first, and then like think of the enemy or whoever.
No, you're absolutely right.
That is true.
Based on the Barbie movie coming out.
Oh God!
I think the next one will be
Barbie
Predator versus Rock'em Sock'em Robots.
I would see that.
Right? And I'm going to go see that.
Well, we already had Rock and Sock'em Robots. Pacific Rim.
Don't say it. Don't say it. My friend Ben will kill you.
Pacific Rim. That's basically what Rock and Sock'em Robots
Not
was.
really.
I love
really.
Pacific Rim.
I love Pacific Rim.
Oh no,
that was
I'm
awesome.
not kidding.
The first one was amazing, man. That's
and
like,
again, but here's the funny thing. Again, they had lightning in a bottle. So they had fucking giant robots that were just gonna fucking kick ass with monsters.
They had Guillermo del Toro.
The thing is, they also wrote a good story around it. It wasn't just okay. Let's have robots fighting
correct monsters. Yeah,
right.
They had a good story. It was like at the end of this era where they were like fighting these robots, and they were like down to like they built these robots to find these to fight these monsters that came out of nowhere, and they were low on pilots, low on people to take up this mantle, and then finally it was like a last ditch effort to stop all this, and it was pretty good.
And then you had the second movie, and the second movie was just fucking horrible.
It was terrible.
Yeah,
probably why Guillermo del Toro said, "I'm not doing a second movie." I know when it's like get out.
But does anybody watch the series?
Yeah, because the
animated series.
Yeah, del Toro.
I didn't. No,
del Toro just said, "Hey, you know what? It was good enough with one. Why the fuck do you have to do two?"
Exactly.
Actually, no. Guillermo actually wanted to do, of all things,
wanted to do the second
one. No,
easy.
Pacific Rim beats Godzilla. And that was due at the time. Yep, that was due at the time for the fact that when Pacific Rim was coming out,
and that was also legendary, wasn't it?
Yes, but they
legendary.
They were filming at the time the Godzilla film, and where you had Bryan Cranston, you got Quicksilver himself, and Wanda, and all that in that particular film. Now, mind you, it was an interesting film. A lot of Gojira fans like myself were like looking forward to it. You got all the naysayers when they watched that particular film going, why do we have to wait until the end to see Godzilla? Why was this so long?
I was okay with that.
But that's the typical Godzilla film that you get from a Toho. You don't see Godzilla until the very end, or even the
big
nemesis, the villain.
Right.
But the thing is they did it very well for its time. They got a Godzilla. They got it out there. Legendary was on top. And Guillermo was like, I love this idea. We should join the two genres back together because it makes so much sense. It could be in an alternate realm. They never went through with it. So then they proceeded on. And then with Godzilla versus Kong, they wanted to jump into that IP, and that's what our second movie was.
I just think that somebody like Del Toro, who is a insane fan when it comes to monster movies, he knows that property very well. He knows what works and what doesn't work. And that's the problem with Hollywood right now. Hollywood, they're like, oh, you know what? There's this really cool director that did this really cool independent movie that cost, I don't know, $50,000. We're going to put him in a fucking $300 million movie with a shitload of special effects. And that's the problem.
Well, you know who that was originally years and years ago? That was Frank Darabont. Frank Darabont was one of those that did an independent film. Didn't cost, I wouldn't say $50,000, but didn't cost as much as your major blockbuster. He did a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And then after that, he wound up doing The Mist. He wound up doing The Walking Dead, Shawshank Redemption, a slew of films that gave him credibility.
Right. But the difference on that is that while he did those small films, he basically worked himself up to that.
Yes.
Right. While you have some directors that they'll do one small thing, and next thing you know, the studio's putting them on something so big that they themselves don't even know. Like, look, there are directors out there that know how to work with special effects. They just know that business very well. James Cameron, of course, is one of them. I mean, you have some great directors out there that really, really know the special effects, how it works in a film, how you take advantage of it. You got a shitload of directors now that they get put on a film and they don't know jack shit about that. Why? Because, hey, let's just put him in there. He's going to direct it, and we'll worry about the special effects later. And then next thing you know, the special effects look like shit, or they're being used in the wrong way, or the story is just not cohesive enough. Why? Because now you have the studio wants to do one thing, director wants to do the other thing, the writers are just like, fuck this, right? So that's the problem when you have these large IPs and these large franchises, is that everybody thinks they know best. When in reality, the way it starts, right? The way it started is through fans. People look, Jon Favreau was a fucking huge fan of course, Marvel. So what does he do? He does Iron Man. He does a great job with that, right? So the next 10 years are done by people who are great fans of these things. Next thing you know, especially after the end game, thing just went downhill. Why? Because now Disney wants to control everything so much that even the directors are being told, hey, no, the directors are the ones that are not doing the editing anymore. They don't have control over the editing. They don't have control over the music. They don't have control over the actors. They don't have control over anything except just sit yourself there and just say action when you need to say it, which is not a good thing to do. But at the same time, you're giving a director who really doesn't know shit about the IP probably to try to do something like that.
Well, that's kind of like what bothered me about Star Wars, the new trilogy they came out with was episode was it
6, 7,
6, 7, 8. It's
especially 8.
Well, the first one, the one that J.J. Abrams came out with, I didn't think it was that bad. I think it had good potential. I think it was pretty decent, and it had good potential. But then they came up with this idea of like, okay, don't write a trilogy, just write your own, and then the next director will write his continuation of it. And then another director will come in for the third part and write their continuation of it. And that just that was a complete disaster.
Well, that's that's a perfect example of a studio grabbing something that's, look, George Lucas is, and he said it. I just saw this. I saw this clip that he said he borrowed money. He did all kinds of things. So as long as he did not have to go to the studio to try to get any money for it, he was able to control every part of his story. He was able to control every part of his world, and he did it his own way. Why? Because he came up with this world and he understood it. Now, did he fucking execute episodes 1, 2, and 3 very well? Absolutely not. All right. The story was great. I mean, well, the overall idea was great, but the execution wasn't the best. But still made a ton of money. But here's a director that knows his own world, right? He also taught somebody about this world called Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni was his protege. So Dave Filoni understands that. Now you give it to somebody like Kathleen Kennedy, who is supposed to be in charge of this fucking studio, and say,
has her
hey,
own ideas too.
Yeah, and now it's like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I know J.J. Abrams wants something, but you know what? I'm gonna let Ryan Johnson do whatever the fuck he wants. And what did Ryan Johnson do? He must have really hated J.J. Abrams.
He must have hated Star Wars in general, because he basically took everything in it and he said, you know what? What can I do to piss off every single Star Wars fan out there? What can I do to this movie? Just piss everybody off.
Johnson.
Yeah. And he went ahead and did his own thing because he thought he could write Star Wars better. All right. And of course, now there's a whole Star Wars story group, because it takes fucking. Have you seen some of these clips with like everybody in a boardroom? There's like 40 fucking people to try to understand what George Lucas was trying to do. And it's all by committee. But you have a movie like Star Wars that, yes, you had the original person that said, hey, I'm going to have control of this. You have fans like, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, who, especially for the MCU, you have people that, especially Kevin Feige at the time, people who were real fans that really wanted to take their time and make sure that, hey, these things are actually good quality films. But then after that, it's like, oh, you know what? We're making so much money of it. And now with streaming services, we want a piece of the pie that Netflix has.
Exactly. And you know what? I know Rob's always the one that poses a question out to everybody. What do you think of this? I want to pose a question regarding franchises.
Sure.
What do you guys think regarding reboots? Because I think reboots is basically like an artist trying to do a sketch to make something look right. And then as an artist myself, you do a sketch and it doesn't come out right. You crumble it up, you throw it in the garbage, you start over again with a new piece of paper. And that's basically what I see with these reboots a lot of times. Something doesn't quite make it, it fails. So let's scrap it all and start right over again. And
that's a good question, because here's my, I mean, I don't know what you guys think about that, but here's my opinion on that. And we'll go back to Star Wars, right? So George Lucas goes ahead, does his first trilogy, and then he goes ahead and then he does the special editions, and people get all pissed off about it, right? You as an artist, Patrick, I'm sure you've done things, that you had to get at a certain time, things like that. But now that you have, I bet now that you have different tools at your disposal, I could imagine that you have gone to some of your old stuff and you said, hey, let me make a better one of this, or let me just kind of fix a few things to make it better, right?
Exactly. That's right. That's fine. I've done that fine. Before. Yeah, and
I think reboots is like, let's say you as an artist make something, but then all of a sudden I come up and say, hey, I'm going to take your stuff and I'm just going to redo something completely different, based off of what you did. But it's gonna look exactly the same. It's gonna have that same look and stuff like that. But we're gonna give it a spin.
Exactly.
Right? It could be that I make something better than what you made, or it could be that I just fucked up your whole thing.
But it's not even that. You and I, two different people. But it's not like one person saying, let me take your stuff and let me improve on it and start over again. It's basically the same studio sometimes saying, you know what? This didn't work out. Let's just throw it in the garbage and start over and hope nobody remembers the last one and stuff. But it's already out there, man. It's like you can't really erase what you did,
But it happened.
It does happen. Yes, it does. Maybe it's like they should concentrate more on coming out with a good story from the get-go instead of just trying to put stuff out, quickly, just to bank on it.
There's another way to look at it too, because even when you reboot in a specific way, you can mess it up. And a good example of that is Psycho and the remake of Psycho, which is shot for shot. They didn't do anything differently.
It was shot in same actually execution.
But the thing we're seeing now is reboots within just a few years.
Right.
Just a couple of years of the last one they made.
Which is
crazy. It's not like 10 years or 20 years after the last one. It's just a couple of years and then just start right over again. It's
perfect example of that is Batman and
Spider-Man.
And Spider-Man, it's like, oh, we did 3 good movies, but let's reboot it again. And then we did 2 bad movies, and then let's reboot it again. And of course now the last ones were way better.
They found a way to make that work with the multiverse now.
But it took 3 tries.
Yeah, exactly.
or hold on, Frank. You're also saying you could scratch the other stuff by making a multiverse.
Right.
It's like, with the Flash, James Gunn could easily just destroy everything that was there before. And hold on, these are alternate versions of what we need to. And this is the real story.
That's what he wants to do.
Right.
The one time I thought a reboot was just brilliantly done has to be when they rebooted Star Trek, where they went back into an alternate reality. And it kind of like, it's the same characters and it just kind of branched off from the original.
The J.J. Abrams one?
It's a prequel and a sequel at the same time. It's still connected to the original ones, but it's a reboot also. And I mean, they fit everything into that. And I thought it was great,
Well, I mean, that's a franchise that pretty much died a fiery death with Generations and shit like that. And, they just couldn't do, I think the last 2 movies of the Next Generation crew just weren't that great. So it was a way to reboot it, but it was a different timeline, of course. Now they're doing the whole Paramount thing, which some of those shows have been good. Some have been very bad, and again, that's going through its own right now turmoil. I just watched, it is. I mean, I just watched Picard season 3, which is fucking great.
Amazing.
It took 3 seasons to make that show better. Because the first 2 seasons were just okay.
Well, the first season was really good. It hit out of the park. Second one was a snooze fest.
Yeah.
And as you said, Rob, when you told me you got to watch 3, I started watching 3, and I'm like, after I watched 2, and I'm like, yep, this is what we needed.
It was fucking great. Now, I will admit, like, There's been like maybe whatever. That being said, I mean, look, we're trying to figure out. We're not here trying to figure out how to make franchise. I mean, that's what the whole podcast is for, and that's why we got tons of. The thing is that, just is there franchise fatigue? Yes, until the next movie that actually comes up is actually phenomenal, and then there's not franchise fatigue anymore, right? But the thing is that, look, I mean, you look at a movie like Cocaine Bear, right? Look at a movie like Dungeons and Dragons that just came out, and those are movies that were actually fun to watch. Original ideas, one-offs. Of course, I'm sure they're going to make Dungeons and Dragons into a whole IP now. But this first movie, no, they already talked about.
They will.
Yeah, they already talked about a few movies to come out, but this first movie was fucking great. I mean, I went to see it. I mean, Chris Pine was awesome.
Okay, so
Michelle
technically not the first movie. We have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, but
this is like the second attempt.
This is the second attempt on the first one that was just.
They've been trying to make a Dungeons and Dragons movie successful for quite a while. There's a bunch of straight to video ones too,
versions, and then we had the cartoon series
which was successful for 3 seasons.
And in the 80s, you're talking about.
It was successful for 3 seasons, and as a matter of fact, even in this movie,
they have a cameo.
The original cast of the cartoons.
Wait, what?
Is in the movies? Yes,
I gotta see this.
What do you mean, the voice actors or the characters?
No, the characters, the actual characters.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it was actually a really cool little touch there. But you're looking at you're looking at movies that it's like, oh, okay, it's not part of a franchise. Or at least not yet, right? But they were just fresh movies that people were just like, you know what? It's fucking great. It's awesome. And I think we're missing a lot of that. It's just we don't have to fucking have 10 movies of one thing. You do 3, fucking cut it there. I mean, look at Back to the Future. Back to the Future, 3 movies. And it has stayed at 3 movies because Robert Zemeckis said,
won't remake it.
Robert Zemeckis said, I will not remake this, and there will be no sequels to this until the day I fucking die. And it's been that way. And guess what? It has remained a movie that you could still watch nowadays, watch all 3 of them, and enjoy it as a trilogy that's just great. And you're not there going, well, you know what? I want to now know about, I don't know, the Biff's, family and how they got there. And, like they're
Marty's kids.
Marty's kids, exactly. Or, what happened to Marty's kids now in the future and all this I
None of that shit. Lorraine Baines' boobs, did they get bigger?
Did they get bigger, right? I mean, God, I hope they did.
I heard all the kids. No, I'm not going to say that.
So here's a question.
I was going to say something really
really bad.
And listen, in this fucking podcast.
They were all played by Michael J. Fox, and then you go with that where you will.
In this podcast, you can say whatever the fuck you want, because apparently it's now called Fantasy Dicks.
I heard they all got Parkinson's.
Now we know why they're called Fantasy Dicks, because we're a bunch of dicks just ripping apart stuff.
Yes, exactly. Wow. Okay, so moving on, guys. Moving on. So which franchises are we getting tired of? And I'm gonna start mentioning a few of them, and just very briefly on stuff. So. Are we getting tired of Star Wars?
I'm not. It should slow down, but I am not.
I wouldn't say I'm tired of it. I'm just waiting for a good one to come out again.
We have hit or miss with Star Wars, in my opinion.
Right.
I'm not sick of it.
You're not. I mean,
there's some really great things, especially the way they're trying to bring some things back in, like when in The Mandalorian, when Luke Skywalker showed up, you're just like, holy crap, this is awesome.
Right. Okay. I mean, for me, I want to miss it a little. I want to have a year or two. I want to have a year or two of, hey, I haven't seen the Star Wars stuff in a while.
Yes.
That's
so I could actually fucking go. So when I actually sit there, I am all in. So how about the MCU? I mean, listen, we've had 31 movies in TV shows alone. So Marvel's Agent of Shield, Agent Carter, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, the Defenders, and
Human. The Netflix
no, but I'm just saying there's a ton of stuff in there.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that was given to us. So there's a lot of content here You think are we sick of it? Are we just waiting for a better one, or can we just take a break and go, hey, you know what? Even if you just fucking take a year, just do it the right way.
I think spacing it out would be better. Quality over quantity. Exactly what Feige was actually mentioning.
Moving on. So Fast and the Furious, there's only been now I think there's 10 movies or something like that. I have never been a fan. It never attracted me.
I watched them for fun.
Yeah, I think I saw like two.
Same.
I saw like 2 or 3 of them. I thought they were okay, pretty good adventure, racing car movies and stuff. I don't think I got past the third one, but I know there's a whole bunch of others. And from what I've heard, they've just got completely over the top and stuff. Which
I was just going to say, so you missed
but they put a car in space.
Exactly.
Listen, the one thing, the one thing everybody says, and I'm going to probably watch them one day, but the one thing everybody says is like from one movie to another, the spectacles just become bigger and to the point where you're like, okay, now we got to see what kind of crazy shit they're going to do. Probably a car that jumps from one canyon to another. And then,
it goes in space, man. It goes in space.
This is Sharknado in films.
It's also another franchise that's actually very successful. That's the other thing.
That's true. Yeah. So there is an audience for it.
Right. There is an audience for it, which I'll give them that. But also, they're not releasing a fucking Fast and the Furious every fucking, every year or twice a year. Right.
So every like 2 or 3, like 3 or 4 maybe at most.
Yeah, exactly. So how about the Harry Potter stuff? I mean, what do you guys think of that franchise? I mean,
I think it's not bad. I mean, it's okay. I saw the original Harry Potter films. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the original the stories, but I thought the original series was well done. It was good, and then it ended, and that was it. It wasn't a whole bunch of. It didn't keep continuing. It was just based on the books that came out. And that was it. It just wrapped it up. And apparently now they're coming out with the second series, which is also based on books, but I'm not too familiar with that. But I had no problem with the original.
Well, remember that they came out with Fantastic Beasts, which Fantastic Beasts movies have never been as profitable, I would say, as the original. Yeah. I always thought Deathly Hallows, that to me was a cash grab. Why did you have to make Deathly Hallows 2 parts? You could have just made that one movie, but that was them trying to make, again, that's the whole, studio behind it. But I get, like, just like you, Patrick, I'd never been like a fan of the world or something like that.
They were entertaining movies. I liked them. They were okay, but I'm not like a huge fan,
There's some people that are fucking crazy fans out there. One of my best friends, she is just a nut when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I love the first movie. I think that once they finish with Deathly Hallows, great. You got a fucking theme park out of it. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
And then they came out with...
Let me ask you, Rob.
Yeah.
You base that on the movies by itself, or did you ever read books?
I never read the books.
I didn't read the books either.
I didn't read the books either, but
did you read the books?
Oh my goodness. Nobody here than me read the books?
You read the books?
Yeah.
Okay.
I read all of them.
You read all of them?
Really...
So
the stories are great.
Yeah, same here.
But the movies, if you watch the movies, granted, they follow the general theme of the books.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that were in the books that are not in the movies.
That's any movie that's
but that's a lot of movies out there.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, that's a lot of movies out there, but they were still successful. And again, they got a theme park out of it. They got a lot of merchandising out of it. Till this day, it still does very good when it comes to merchandising. Still a good movie, still a good series. Once they started doing the Fantastic Beasts stuff, and of course, then all the controversy with Johnny Depp not coming back and all these things, I think these movies are gonna slowly. I mean, if they keep going, they're gonna just have a slow death because The Secrets of Dumbledore was just a complete flop.
Yeah,
and they need to. I have to think they're gonna have to go back to saying, "Hey, well, I mean, if you think about it, the first movies. I mean, it's a series of books. How successful were the other books?
Exactly.
I mean,
they sold out every time they came out. That's all I know.
Huh? Yeah, exactly. They sold out every time.
But did they sell out because
Fantastic Beasts? No, but I'm talking about the Fantastic Beasts are based off of books, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Were those books as successful as the Harry Potter ones?
they're probably not as successful. No.
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself, are these books successful because they're good stories or because they're connected to the original books, the original stories, which were already proven to be great stories,
Yeah, Fantastic Beasts I didn't actually read. So I'm just basing
and
on
those are supposed to be I'm guessing
books.
Those are supposed to be prequels, I think, to Harry Potter and all that stuff.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So but again, it's a story again that is kind of like the Harry Potter stuff is kind of contained in its own thing, and it's a world. I mean, it's a huge world to explore. But the one thing I would say is that I'm glad they never exploited that world too much, where they all of a sudden it was like, hey, now we're gonna look into all these different teachers and and have them do their own adventures and all this stuff. It was just kind of contained, did very well. So James Bond movies. Now, James Bond, of course, James Bond is kind of a strange one, I would say. Because James Bond is like, okay, so we know that the last five with Daniel Craig, that was an entire reboot of the character itself.
Yeah.
Right? The others, I don't believe they were ever reboots. I think it's just a continuation of a long ass story, a long ass, career with different actors.
Well, they was the original ones. If I'm not mistaken, they were all based on each one was based on an individual book written by Ian Fleming.
Yeah.
So they had material for all of those. I'm not sure if they still have any more books to go through, but
here's the thing with James Bond, and this is maybe me just my own theory, but James Bond is not a person. James Bond is a code name, and 007 is a code name also, or it's part of this. It's part of that identity.
Yeah. Right.
So each time there is a James Bond, it's kind of like Dread Pirate Robert.
Takes over.
James Bond dies,
a new one takes over.
And a new one takes over. Right.
Yeah.
Funny you say that because Patrick and I remember we were helping this one guy. He was a director and he I
remember that.
A very kooky director. He was trying to do his own sci-fi show, but he came up, he was saying, he says, wouldn't it be cool that James Bond, the name James Bond in 007 is just a name, and all the other James Bonds, so like you got like Sean Connery, you had Roger Moore, all of these guys are just retired now and living on an island while the other ones are, and wouldn't it be great to have a movie where all of a sudden all of them come back? And that has been always in my mind. It's like I'm sure that the Fleming, I guess, estate would never fucking do something like that, but that would be a great thing where all of a sudden it's like, hey,
a certain story based upon that. That would be funny to see. It's like, hold on, we have to make a toast. Why? He's buried over there. His name was Sean.
Exactly.
Sean
but remember that one? There was one James Bond movie that was done by Sean Connery. It was called Never Say Never. Remember, it was a remake of Thunderball, right? Was it Thunderball? And it was made by an entirely different studio, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I forgot what it was. There must have been a loophole in the rights to that one, but he came back and it was a good James Bond movie too, but just showing that, that was the closest you could get to having like one of the old James Bond reprise their role, because it was already during Roger Moore era, I think.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
And not only that, but he did look a little older. So let's go now to Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek, the original Star Trek show, which was 3 seasons, it was canceled after the 3rd season.
That is correct.
And its popularity really came back in syndication. That's when it was like really popular. Everybody loved it. And of course, they made the motion picture, which was kind of a success, but it was still boring as fucking hell.
It was like they took a lot from 2001. That's the kind of direction they wanted to go in with that.
Yeah, they were banking on the whole. Yeah, they were banking on that whole sci-fi era during the late 70s.
Correct.
And the fact that let's reprise this from the 60s that Lucille Ball kind of put her name on for a TV show that nobody wanted to ever cover and do.
Yeah, Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball were the reason Star Trek.
Desilu Productions.
Yeah. But then you had Wrath of Khan, which was a huge success.
Amazing.
Right?
still a great movie.
Right. The Search for Spock, not as good as Wrath of Khan, but then you have the Voyage Home, which everybody loved because of the comedic tones of it.
Yeah.
Final Frontier, honestly, sucked.
Computer.
And probably the best one, at least for me, out of all of them, was Undiscovered Country.
Yeah, Undiscovered Country. It's a curse, they say. The even numbered ones were the great ones.
Even
it's like 2, 4, 6.
Yeah, because then you had Generations, which Generations wasn't as good, but then you have First Contact, which was also phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right. But then after that curse just decided to go through the whole thing. And then Insurrection and Nemesis were not the best. But they used the reboots. And the reboot Star Trek was great. Into Darkness.
Ones with Chris Pine, you mean?
Yeah. Into Darkness, a lot of people did have a problem with it because, Noonien Soong was a white guy.
Yeah, it was a British. I was always like, if you're going to bring him back, just get some guy. I mean, they could have gotten Javier Bardem or something, somebody who would have fit that role perfectly.
Or just get somebody. I mean, the name itself, I think he's supposed to be from India.
Indian,
right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of great Indian actors out there that could have got
Antonio Banderas.
And then there was Star Trek Beyond, which was not received very well, and also was I don't think it made as much money as the other ones.
I think the good thing, the best thing I liked about it was how they rebooted it. I already mentioned that earlier, but I think the part where I think it started falling apart is they never really took off into their 5-year mission. You were expecting to see them in their 5-year mission. And I think the first one you had that. Yeah. And then the second one, it was kind of, they were about to start it, but didn't quite start it. And then the third one was, they were kind of on a mission, but then they went back to, they weren't quite out in the deep space 5-year mission, which I would love to see, man. I would have loved to see that.
And truly after that, it was more of a, from what I hear, is more of the actors, not, some of them didn't want to come back. Some did want to come back. Some of them just were like, it was all about money and things like that. So, I think it's a franchise that still needs another movie, an actual movie. And honestly, I mean, I'll go back to Star Wars. Star Wars needs another movie because the last movie was Solo, and that was it. After that, everything has been franchised. So
I think they learned their lesson, because Solo was the first one after 8, which was the big mess for me.
Right.
And to be honest, I mean, I'm probably going to get a little flack for this, but I actually enjoyed Solo.
So did I. I said that to Rob not too long ago. I loved it after the second viewing on like when I got it on Blu-ray.
I still have a problem with it, but that's just me.
I mean, it was written by the same guy who wrote Empire, and you could see it in the way the tonal and the art going on there.
Yeah, but my problem with it is, and maybe it could be done nowadays, because nowadays things look better, but you're trying to substitute a man that really cannot be
substituted,
and that's Harrison
Ford. Yeah,
right? I mean, you're never going to get it.
About this before,
right? But
it's called suspension of disbelief, man. You just have to. You say this guy is not Harrison Ford, but
I'll take your word for it, Patrick.
But he was also in Cocaine Bear. It's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he was in Cocaine Bear. Yeah.
So the next one is Lord of the Rings.
I have a love for this.
Never got sick of that movie.
I never got sick of it, even the extended versions. But the thing is that they did all 3 Lord of the Rings movies consecutively, long in an original theatrical release, and then we got the extended cuts. And I remember, because you wind up buying the regular theatrical release, and then you wind up buying the extended cuts, because
bought those fucking movies 3 times, man, each.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good, man.
But then we got The Hobbit.
Actually, no,
which is a prequel.
Yeah, 3 times.
And it was a trilogy for a prequel of a book that was very short and very small.
It was a short movie. So and it has gotten its criticisms, but I would say this: box office wise, made its money. I enjoyed it because I was never a big Tolkien fan. So I took it for what it was. This is another franchise that it is huge, and the amount of information and the amount of people out there that are Tolkien fans, and there are people that actually have degrees in Tolkien lore and all these things.
I went to a college class for Tolkien.
Yeah.
And community college.
Exactly. So
for that.
Unfortunately, the Rings of Power got criticized on Amazon. And it's because, of course, Amazon couldn't get their hands on the entire IP.
Yeah.
So they just kind of, they kind of butchered their own thing, and they kind of made up their part of it the own thing. And now I hear they're going to try to redo the Lord of the Rings again.
Yes. Yeah.
So here's a question. I mean, were these
why?
Right. It was done well by Peter Jackson once. Why try to redo it again?
Especially in an era where he was able to create things in a digital way where everything was so beautiful to look at.
Exactly.
It to this day you look at it and it doesn't age, and that's the whole thing. There's some movies that you look at and you go, love the movie, but yes, it does age because the special effects or the terminology or the film techniques and all that stuff. This is a movie that ages very, very well. Why the fuck do we need to do these movies again?
That's what I'm talking about with the reboots. Why?
Yeah.
The reboots.
Yeah, and Peter Jackson did great for just like recreating Kong for King Kong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's used in college courses now to this day of how to do proper filmmaking with that particular movie. I like
that King Kong that Peter Jackson did. I know it got criticized a lot, but I still like it. So
same here.
Yeah. So
there's some really good scenes in there.
Yeah.
I think it went on a little long, but I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah. So the next one, Terminator. What do you guys think of that? I mean, is that something that maybe should just go away?
I'm with you, Rob. The first two, great. After that, downhill, man. I think I saw two more after that just to see how they would be, and it was just like, and then the next one, I'm like, all right, let me give it one more.
Or whatever it was.
Dark Fate was just atrocious.
Atrocious, yeah. Well, and that's literally after Cameron got his IP back. He was able to get the rights back to it for himself, and he thought, oh, okay, the guy who did Deadpool, the original Deadpool movie, could make this work. After T1, Terminator, the original, and Terminator 2, it should have stopped off there. The third one was okay. By the fourth one, sorry, you're going off the rails like a crazy train at that point, and let me try to milk it.
And there was the one with Christian Bale, which I like Christian Bale, and I thought that
one would have been good.
John Connor, I think he did pretty good as John Connor, but the movie, wasn't the best, but it just couldn't capture lightning in a bottle ever. After two, it was just and honestly, they still want to try to exploit it and try to make more. And I'm like, just
let it go.
Let it go, man. Let it go. Store that shit for 10 years or whatever it is. Fuck, 20 years. Let people forget about it and then come up with it again and see if people want it. But right now, I don't think it's a franchise that works.
No.
It just doesn't work, especially nowadays, because when it first came out, seeing an endoskeleton, holy shit, that was fucking phenomenal. And then after that, you saw the T-1000, which is an effect that, wow, nobody ever seen before.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you have seen, how many movies have you seen that people are, they're robots and they're fucking, morphing going on and all kinds of it just doesn't impress me anymore.
I thought they had a good idea with the one with Emilia Clarke. That one,
that was Terminator 3.
No, it was more.
It's Genesis.
Genesis. Yeah,
it was Genesis.
Okay.
And the story behind it was like he comes back and sees Sarah Connor again with Michael Biehn's character Reese.
Right.
And they could have explored that so much. Could have been an alternate reality. They kind of split off because something changed in there, and it just didn't work though. But it was a good idea. It didn't execute it right.
It's gonna take a special writer to say, because if you look at all Terminator movies, every time a Terminator movie comes on, you say, okay, they're still messing with the timeline. So I have to imagine that there's like 17 different timelines,
splintered alternate realities,
right? So it's gonna take a special writer to say, hey, this is what's really going on in the world of the Terminator. And this is how it's affecting the fabric of time, because an AI is trying to keep going back and kill this kid or alter history, and now the fabric of time and is they have to do something that's but they will have to write it perfectly. Rocky movies, what do we think about the Rocky movies? So
should have ended at 3.
Yep, agreed. I agree.
Nah, I like Rocky 4, man.
I was gonna say,
I like
not have Rocky 4,
but it should have ended at 3.
No, I like Rocky 4.
I actually am a fan of Rocky 5.
Are you really?
Really?
I like Rocky
Gunn? Okay.
Have you guys seen the new remake of Rocky 4?
Oh, no. We talked about this, yeah.
You didn't know about
Stallone's recut.
So Stallone,
no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Stallone went back and recut the entire thing of Rocky 4 because he has.
So it's a recut. It's not a remake. We're just, or would you?
Well, yeah, I would say it's a recut, but when you watch it, it completely changes the tone of the entire movie. I mean, if you look on Rotten Tomatoes, the original Rocky 4, I think, had like 40%. The recut, 89% or something like that.
Wow.
Nice.
So
that's the one with that's the Ivan Drago one, right?
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I gotta go back to him, and I have to go throw in some shots to him.
But yeah, he went. He went back and he because he had a lot of footage that he didn't use.
Yeah,
he still had. So there's new footage of Carl Weathers. There's just a ton of new footage in there.
All right, I'm gonna have to check that out now.
But the story really flows so well, and now it's actually done very well. So
it's done very well, yeah.
Yeah, it's really well. But of course, one, they're not going to redo. At least the studio, I don't think is ever going to do a redo of Rocky.
The studio's not going to release it. Stallone would actually have to get a crowdfund to get it going, to get to like Blu-ray or DVD, in order to get the rights to get it to be released.
Well, he wants the rights to Rocky back, but they won't. Yeah, but he's all pissed off because they won't sell it to him or give it to him. I was like, dude, you gave up those rights a long time ago, man. So
exactly,
but of
still
course,
makes money off of it.
Yeah, but of course, now there's the Creed movies, which is supposed to be a continuation of that universe. I thought Creed 1 and 2 were pretty good.
Yeah.
I haven't seen 3.
I haven't seen 3 yet. I still haven't watched it yet.
And now with this guy, what's his name? Jonathan Majors getting arrested for for assault and stuff like that. Yeah, we don't know.
Living the Creed life for real.
Yeah, we don't know
they could always replace Kang. Kang could be another person completely.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, right now, it's up in the air whether Disney's going to use them or not. So,
yeah.
All right, Alien movies. I mean, again,
we touched on this.
Your first one was a horror film that was just fucking amazing.
Ridley Scott. Amazing. Second, James Cameron
action adventure,
and then after that it just dropped, and they've never been able to. I mean, is this a franchise that should just fucking die?
Honestly, it's a franchise that could be recreated at a later time. Give it another 20 years. Yeah.
I would say give it another fucking 10 years or something like that, or
20 years. I said.
Yeah. Oh well. Okay. Predator, same thing with that.
Predator, we could give definitely another 10 years, but we got Prey. Prey gave us.
I heard that was pretty good.
That is actually very, very good.
Honestly, that movie did credit to the first 2 films of standalone films of Predator.
Right.
So my suggestion: watch 1, watch Prey. You could watch Predator 2.
Just watch one and Prey, and that's it, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, you could easily get away with that, and it's fine, and they're very good.
I like the one that they went to the planet.
Predators.
The Predators one.
That's Predators.
That wasn't actually bad. That was actually pretty good. But that being said, it's just not a movie that, like, once you see the Predator, the surprise is gone.
Literally, yeah. That's what the whole point of Predator was the build up of the alien. Just like in Alien with Ridley Scott, you got to build up to the alien.
The problem with Predator is that once you see the alien and once you know what it is, unless you explore that world really well, all it is just always a monster trying to hunt people. Mm-hmm. And if you did it the first time, and you did it the second time, fuck, you're gonna do it 5 more times, and that's the same shit all the time.
Well, Robert Rodriguez actually did a great job with Predators.
He did,
yes.
But the fact that he made the people that were being hunted just as bad as the one that was hunting them, because they all were despicable in their own way, in their own credit on Earth.
And let me tell you, that was good. But then you get something like The Predator, where Olivia Munn came out, and you're like, what the fuck movie is this?
Oh, that was just a farce in itself. That if you want to just have like a popcorn flick and laugh at people getting slaughtered, that's it.
Yeah. All right. So Blade Runner. So as we all know, Blade Runner, when it first came out in the movies, wasn't very successful, but it became a movie that
one of my favorites.
That had like 5 different versions with another like 5-minute extended cut. Another 30 seconds exactly after you could go to the midnight showing. You got to watch The Big Bang Theory because they actually break it down to how many versions there were.
But Blade Runner is one of those movies that it set such a tone on what sci-fi could be. It is now considered one of the best sci-fi movies in film history.
It's usually in the top 3 or top 5. Always
it's usually in the top 3 or top 5. It's recognized as that. But then we get Blade Runner 2049. And
it was okay.
I thought that was actually really good.
It was okay.
It was okay, but it was just it didn't make money, and people criticized the crap out of it.
Just like the original.
Right. But if you go back, I mean, I would tell you this much. Blade Runner 2049, on a home theater system, it has some amazing scenes that will really do a number
just
on
very much like Dune.
Right.
Dune, the new Dune movie came out. I still have yet to watch it completely.
Yeah,
that's a good movie.
That's a really good movie.
They did it
what everybody tells me.
So do you think Blade Runner can be a successful movie, or is that a world that is just too difficult to explore?
I don't think it's so much the world. I think it's more the storyline. It's basically it's basically a storyline and the character. I mean, you really like Deckard, but it's also the storyline that poses this moral question. I mean, these replicants are so much like human. What's the difference? They could technically be considered human. Right. And I think if they're going to continue a franchise like this, it needs to have something very similar to that, like a social commentary that poses a question, kind of like the old Star Trek used to have. Each episode had a social commentary on something.
Right. Yeah,
of course, Blade Runner was on a much deeper level, but I think it should have a consistency on that. And I think it could be successful if they did something with that.
And you would really have to have somebody that can write this thing.
I know.
And take on a project like this and make it great, because they tried it with 2049. And I think that there were certain things that it missed out on. First of all, I didn't think that, what was the main character?
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah,
Ryan Gosling. I didn't care for his character for some reason.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't.
Yeah. So, but that being said, I mean, you can't bring back Harrison Ford. So how would you, one, how do you explore this world? 2, how do you make a good story that really, really is compelling and it grabs you, but at the same time you're exploring this future and the aesthetics have to remain the same as the original in order to actually make it seem like it's coming from that future. So that's something.
No, they are coming out with an Amazon Studios series, Blade Runner, which Ridley Scott's attached to.
I heard about it, and I saw Blade Runner, Black Pearl. What? Not Black Pearl.
That was actually pretty good. The
Black Delilah or something like
Lotus.
that.
Lotus.
Yeah, that wasn't that bad. And I've actually read some of the comic books that they have out there, and they're not bad either. It's just if you don't have the original Deckard character, it kind of like you're kind of like this. There really needs to explore something more there. Pirates of the Caribbean. So
I love that show.
Here's
I love that series. Sorry.
Here's a movie that number 1, 2, and possibly 3, honestly, number one really was lightning in a bottle too, because
it was.
Pirate movies were not a thing for Hollywood, and the fact that they took a gamble on this movie
on an amusement park ride,
correct,
that was the starter for Disney at that time in amusement parks.
Yeah, so it's just,
and they made that. Yeah,
so it was successful. Then they made number two, of course, bigger and better, and I think especially with Davy Jones and the effects of Davy Jones. I mean, of course, they won an Oscar because of that. That was pretty cool. Third one got a lot of criticism, but it was still a fun movie.
Yes.
Once you got into 4 and 5, come on, man.
They kind of lost their way.
Exactly.
Especially with mermaids and everything else. I do agree with it.
Right.
They should have just left it alone.
I think they should have
on.
I think they should have just done 3.
And then if they wanted to reboot it, do it another 15, 20 years later with a female.
Yeah.
They could do that later on.
I mean, that they're trying to do. I think they're trying to do one now with that. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
The character they added to the attraction. They added a new female character to the attraction. They're supposedly want to base the new main character.
I mean, look, it made a lot. That's a series that made a lot of money.
Oh yeah.
Of course, Johnny Depp is bathed in money because of it. I just think that 4 and 5 didn't need to be there. And again, this is another example of a studio trying to just take something and just exploit it to the point of like, okay, we killed it as much as we could, and it'll never come back.
Yeah. I'll be less kind than Rob. I lost it after. I mean, the first one was great. After the first one, second one was kind of like, okay, it's all right, and then it just went downhill after the second one for me.
So Die Hard movies again. This is another movie. This is another series that lightning in the bottle again. Another that term I'm going to keep using, lightning in a bottle again, with the first movie, which was great,
phenomenal.
Yeah,
exactly.
Second movie.
You remember when we went to see that?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
It was you. It was
we went
you,
to, like,
me,
the midnight show.
Yeah, exactly. We went out to in New York, and we thought it was great. Second movie was basically a rehash of the first movie, except in an airport.
It was still good.
It was still good. In it.
Yes. Yeah. And then after that, they just tried. Then after that, Bruce Willis just fucking took this thing and just fucking ran it into the ground with all the shit that he did. No, actually, you know what?
I enjoyed the one with Samuel Jackson.
Yeah,
I love that one, man.
It's fun. That was the third one.
That was the third one. Again,
and then the fourth one was the one with Kevin Smith had a small part in it. That wasn't too bad. I thought that
wasn't too bad. The first 4 good. After that,
agreed.
The one when he goes to Russia with his son. That was terrible.
Yes. John Wick, another fucking fascinating world, especially the whole world of assassins and stuff is great.
Yeah.
He did 4 movies that were all just amazing.
Yep.
And they stopped it. They were supposed to do 5. They stopped it at 4. And now they're going to do the ballerina, which is exploring.
Who's that? De Armas?
Yes, De Armas. So so they're going to do that. And then, of course, they're going to do the Continental, which is, of course, going to explore that world too.
Yeah.
If done right, great. But right now, that's a film franchise that has worked. And I'm hoping that they don't do the mistake of, hey, let's exploit the shit out of this and run it into the ground.
Yeah.
And, and all of a sudden you're like, great, you took something I love and now you just made it shit.
Just destroyed it. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So that I'm trying to, have a positive attitude when it comes to that one. All right.
Yeah.
Rambo.
Did we talk about Rambo already?
No, we seen that in so long.
We didn't.
No, I was thinking Rocky. Good. Damn.
Yeah, Rocky.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Same guy.
Same guy, different. Same guy, different career. So the first Rambo I thought was good because it was a story of a soldier on how he was being treated.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with him going out there to, to save the world or, or whatever, bring back soldiers back and stuff like that. It was just, And the first movie had this really emotional part when, at the end, he's talking about how he's being treated, that he can't hold a job. He could drive a fucking, $10 million tank, but they won't fucking, let him get a job, just the most simplest job, and he'll lose it because, of who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about, of course, his friend who, I guess, had his legs blow up because of, of a bomb in his shoe shine, in Vietnam. And it's just that emotional part really, like, when you see it, it really grabs you, because this is a man that suffering, and so great movie, great first movie after that. Rambo First Blood became a huge hit.
Yeah,
because of course it's a typical 80s action film.
Right.
And then of course you had, and it worked. I mean, it was like, oh, okay, he went out there and did his thing. And then of course you had Rambo 3, which now he confronts the Russians just like everybody else does in the 80s.
Well, that was like the mid to late 80s at that point.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that specifically with my cousin because we're both into it. My uncle subjected me and my cousin because, my uncle was part of the tape trading community. So we had to watch Rambo because it just came out on VHS. So literally about within like 6 months after it came out in the theater, it was on VHS.
Mm-hmm.
First Blood Part 1. And it scared the shit out of me. But, of course, I had to see Rambo 2. Had to go see Rambo 3 in the theaters with my cousin. But it was the typical Russian thing to do. But after that, it got boring.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to see that, except until the Rambo movie that came out, in 2000 something?
Yeah.
Right.
Let me tell you, that film, some of the action sequences, especially when he grabs that 50 cal and he's just blowing heads off.
Yeah.
Was insane. I was like, holy shit, that's
Bodies
awesome.
hitting the floor,
right.
Everything exploding. Yeah.
What is that? The new Rambo? Just Rambo?
I think
it was called it was just called Rambo.
Right.
Yeah, just Rambo.
Rambo.
Yeah.
But you saw more blood. It could have been unrated at that point in the theater.
Oh my god.
Because it was so bad.
It was
because you saw bodies falling apart. They had amputees replacing people, showing their bodies exploding.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. But then all of a sudden he did the last Rambo, which now he's a ranch handler or something like that, and he goes to Mexico to try to get this.
Well, he went back to his family farm.
He did. And I wish they would have explored that a little more, as opposed to all of a sudden making it a, kidnapping movie or something. Kind of
bookend.
That's
part of that story.
It was taken with Rambo.
It was his niece.
It was taken with Rambo.
But what I'm saying is, what I'm saying about that is that what they should have done is, so they started with Rambo as himself being the person that he was, and they were trying to end it that way. And they should have ended it with, how is he adjusting after coming back from Burma? Again, it's just like coming back from Vietnam and, being, looked at in such a different way, as opposed to, hey, now I train horses and now I got to go to Mexico and kill a whole bunch of people. And then they're coming over here and they're going to kill more people. Like, it became another just boring Rambo, whatever.
Hasn't everybody had that happen to them where they've had to go to Mexico and kill a cartel? Come on.
But again, I think, and honestly, that's a film franchise that I don't think it's ever coming back. I just don't.
I don't think so either.
I don't see how it could. I think
that's like him coming back as Judge Dredd. It's not going to happen.
No, it's never going to happen. So, and Rambo, I think it's more of a product of the 80s, and it's probably going to stay at the 80s. So
I agree.
Transformers. There's a franchise that got really fucking,
It should have stopped at 1.
Yeah. That one was great. So the next ones were kind of iffy for me. So the first one was excellent. It did a good job, which, surprisingly, since it was like a movie based on a Hasbro toy.
Right.
And they did a really good job with the first one. The second one, it started slipping a little and just.
I mean,
although I will say the Beast Wars one that's coming out could be good.
Could be, because it's the same people I think that did Bumblebee. Right. Yeah. I believe so.
I did not see Bumblebee. I did not see that.
You didn't see Bumblebee. So here's what I was saying.
Bumblebee was really, really good.
Yeah, Bumblebee is actually
I'll probably
excellent.
Check that out. I wanted to see it. I remember I heard good things about it.
Not only that, but then they show Optimus Prime and all the other robots exactly the way they're supposed to look on the cartoons.
Wow.
Yeah. So they did, which.
Wait, doesn't that take place in the 80s or 70s or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
So that's probably why it's got that 80s style going to it.
But it's still done really well, which people then started asking, why couldn't fucking Michael Bay do that instead of doing what he did? Don't get me wrong. I think they were still cool, but after a while, especially that last one he did with Mark Wahlberg, oh my God, those were horrible. I'm hoping for a good thing. And the good thing about it is we haven't seen a Transformer movies in over 5 years, if not more. I mean, the Bumblebee movie, I think, was the last one. So hopefully, that will, so Transformers was one of them that I think should have died a quick death after 1 or 2.
Yeah. Or, I mean, they should have just better stories. I mean, I'm not sure what happened in 2, but
it suffered what every other movie that Michael Bay suffers about, which is all action, no fucking story. That's the problem there. X-Men. So the X-Men, now the X-Men are going to be in the MCU, but
that was kind of hit or miss for me. I think the first 2, I think, were pretty good.
Yes.
I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure about the third one. I don't think that one was my cup of tea.
Oh no, The Last Stand? No.
Yeah. No. And then I think the other one that really surprised me really good was
Days of Future Past.
Days of Future Past, which is actually based on the comic, which they did a really good job on,
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but then after that, I mean, it's just, again, it was just X-Men has been one of those that hasn't been able to capture the same, what I would say that Marvel did.
And
the
Fox series didn't do as well as it should have. And then I'm hoping that Marvel Disney actually does keep up.
Let's hope that Marvel just decides that they want to do quality instead of quantity. And
correct.
X-Men is a very complex series. I mean, there's so many social commentaries and things in the X-Men itself that I'm hoping they do explore that. But at the same time, I'm hoping they don't go ahead and start changing characters just to appease a group out there.
Yeah.
The characters have a lot of history. Keep the characters the same. That's all I can say on that. Men in Black should have probably died after the first one.
Agreed. I agree.
Yeah.
I think the second one's actually pretty good. Definitely, they should have stopped there. The one with Chris Hemsworth, that's garbage.
Oh my God, that's pretty bad. Yeah. As a matter of fact, we covered it on this podcast on how bad it was. But the first one did exactly what the other movies that we have talked about. It captured lightning in a bottle, something that's never been done before, looked great. It was hilarious when it had to be. Great action, great effects. Tommy Lee Jones was phenomenal on that. So was Will Smith.
Right.
Exactly.
And then they tried
before he was slapping people around.
Correct.
Course, so.
Yeah.
and then he did, and then of course they did the other ones. And the problem with the other ones is that they never were able to capture that magic of the first one.
Yep.
They had little snippets here and there that were kind of cool. Like I thought Josh Brolin as Tommy Lee Jones was fucking great, man. I mean, he captured him.
He did a good job on that.
Amazing, but
great impersonation of him. Yeah,
but it's too bad that the movie just wasn't that great. It's like his part was great, the rest of the movie was not that great. And of course, then there's Men in Black International, which now they tried to, reboot the whole thing, and that was just a pure disaster. Not only the movie, but behind the scenes. Oh my God! You should see it.
It's bad.
You should see it just to say, "Holy shit!"
I saw a bad movie. I've seen a lot of bad movies in my life, so you tell me I should see this.
I think you should see it.
He's like, one more is not going to make that much of a difference.
All right. Well, yeah, I have subjected myself to a lot of bad movies.
What do you guys think of Jurassic Park? I mean, Jurassic Park, of course, is
the original, perfect, synonymous to what we had from the book.
Agreed.
A little bit different. Definitely Crichton was on hand during the need for that. The sequel, The Lost World, cinematic beauty based upon what they gave us, different from the book itself that Crichton gave us.
Correct.
But I would have ended it at that. By the third time, where we got a satellite phone and a family and that movie was written 3 to 4 times, especially twice on set where they changed the story plot. That was bad. Tay Leone did a great job of, having a bad earring in my ear. It's like that earwig of like screaming out her son's name throughout the movie. But and then the Jurassic World sequels after that were okay. After that, I thought I think they should have ended it after Jurassic World and then skip to Jurassic. Oh no, I shouldn't say Jurassic World, but the second one, the Lost World, and then skip to Jurassic World, and then did maybe 2 movies of that, because now they keep expanding.
What do you other guys think?
For me,
that last movie.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
That last movie, you watch it. That's 2 different movies.
It is.
It's 2 different movies.
It is. It's like 3 different comic book series all in once.
No, I'll go real quick. So mine is favorite. The first one, always amazing. Second one, pretty good. Not as good as the first one. I'm probably gonna get shit for this, but I actually enjoyed the third one. I think that was Joe Johnston who directed it, who's not a bad director. He started off as a concept designer and stuff, and he's done some decent movies, and I thought it was actually entertaining. But then after that, it was so. And then what was it? The new ones with Chris Pratt. First one that came out, excellent. Second one came out, entertaining, very good. Not quite as good as the first one. And then the last one that came out with Frank, it was just all over the place. I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, they kind of did the third one, like they did the third one with the last movie.
Yep.
Yeah, my thought has always been that, so I read the actual Michael Crichton books, 1 and 2, and there's so much detail in those books that of course you can't put on screen.
Yeah.
But I thought that they should have ended it with 2. And that was it. The thing is, again, they did something that has never been done before, and it's put these digital dinosaurs on the movies. They look great. I mean, you sit there in the audience just like you see the characters in the screen, and your mouth is just dropped open because you're like, how the fuck are they doing this, right?
Yeah. How
many of you remember seeing Jurassic Park for the first time in theaters?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, and then the second one came out, and it's like, okay, you know what? We're getting one more of this. This is awesome. But then after that, again, you're like, okay, now they're just kind of milking it along. And then, of course, when they did I'm not gonna say reboot, but different cast of having Chris Pratt, that was actually pretty good.
It was. It could have gone in a good direction,
but then it went down. Yeah. Then it went downhill again, and then they ended it. And I know they're going to probably try to come up with another one. So here's my problem with that. My problem with that is that, one, when we first saw Jurassic Park, the only thing that we saw before that usually was stop motion animation. Now we saw digital dinosaurs for the first time.
Correct.
A documentary like Walking with Dinosaurs, which was probably one of the most successful documentaries out there, because I remember when they first announced that, the ratings were through the roof because they were doing digital dinosaurs, and everybody's like, holy shit, just like Jurassic Park. And it looked fantastic.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you could have 1,000 fucking dinosaur movies. They're all going to look great. You know why? Because now anybody could do digital dinosaurs. There's nothing special about it.
Well, even dinosaur autopsy.
Here's what
autopsy that you can see on Disney
what I would
Plus.
say. I know you like watching a lot of the B movie stuff, and I don't count.
Pastor.
I don't count B movies, because B movies are just, it's somebody in a basement doing their own thing. What I'm talking about is big franchise movies that, because we already had dinosaur movies. We already had monster movies. We already had Godzilla. Those are things that are digitally done, which you never thought you would see it that way. And now it looks even better than sometimes the original. But the problem is, doing another dinosaur movie, it's like, all right, so what's the story this time?
Yeah.
And it just, there was a really cool book one time called Dinotopia. I don't know if you guys ever saw it.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
right.
Series too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gurney, the artist Gurney, it's an amazing artist. Did all those
amazing artist. I have I think the original book. It's great to look at. It's gorgeous, and then they try to make a movie out of it, and it
was terrible.
blows. Right, so you could have a great story. You could have somebody that comes up with a great stuff, but unless it gets executed the right way, it's just going to continue to be just dinosaurs in a movie that somebody decided to put up there. So there has to be something special to the next one coming out in order to do that. And who knows? I mean, we just got to see what we could do with dinosaurs because the last few haven't been great. Riddick, this will be our last one. So Riddick with Vince Diesel. I think the first movie was great, called Pitch Black.
Yeah.
Yes.
After that,
it was kind of hit or miss. The second one was kind of meh for me.
The second one was kind of Flash Gordon in space.
Exactly, and it had this. Yeah, it was. And the third one was more akin to the first one, where there was like they were on a planet,
darker.
Yeah, which was not bad. It was pretty good. And I heard there's a third one coming out, so we'll see.
We'll see what happens.
It's the fourth in the entire
fourth one.
The fourth in and they also had like a animated version or something like that.
Right. Yes, they did. Yeah.
So here's the whole thing. I mean, all of these. I mean, there's some that were hit and miss. There's some that just haven't been able to capture that magic that the first one did, and it's franchises again that you have writers that just don't know how to write for what they originally had. You have others that are just huge money grabs, and they've done very well for themselves, but they're starting to, they're starting to just, not produce what they were producing in the beginning. We would love to see more original content. Again, that's why I mentioned Cocaine Bear, because it was just such an outrageous concept. Yeah.
That's the what do you call it? Snakes on a Plane of this era,
Pretty much. Yeah.
Exactly.
Or Sharknado.
Exactly. Sharknado. Correct. Or something like Dungeons and Dragons that just came out, and I just saw that, and it was actually very good. So what franchises do you think you would like to see that of IP that you know of? I think we need fresh stuff out there that hasn't been seen before, and hopefully gets respected enough that they could actually do it right.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is E.T. You know what I mean? It's the one great movie, and a lot of people would love to see some continuation of that story.
I don't.
And you
could do would you want to see the book?
You're like, I don't.
No. You know why? Because the first movie is such a beautiful movie. And to all of a sudden, like, how can I say? It's a gorgeous movie. It was so well made.
Yeah.
For me, it is a movie that's perfection. And if you can't do the same, if you can't even do 90% of what that movie is, you are tarnishing what that movie. I would rather that movie stay by itself, but that's just me. I just like the Back to the Future movies. I think that should only be 3. Let it stay at 3 and never remake those movies, because even though they are a little dated, they're still fun to watch, and they're just something very wholesome about it, which is so great.
You're forgetting about the alternate Marty cut that we could get from Eric Stoltz.
Oh man, I've seen the deleted scenes with that. Oh man,
that's horrible.
It was pretty much.
We can still get that.
But how about you, Patrick? Anything that you?
Yeah, there's one, and I had hopes that it would eventually become a movie. It's actually a TV show, but I could see it becoming a pretty good franchise. And about 10 years ago, they came out with a TV show, and it was short run. It was a reboot of it, and they just completely didn't do it justice. But I think if they did do it justice, is now this is my nerd side coming out here. I was a big fan of The Night Stalker. They used to come out in the early 70s. The TV show.
Oh, wow.
I think that would be awesome, or at least with Darren McGavin.
Yep.
And that would be awesome for at least a trilogy. I think it would be absolutely awesome. It could be like a comedy horror type thing, and I can see either Bryan Cranston or William H. Macy playing the part of Kolchak, and I think it would be great.
Nice.
I could see that. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. No, I personally, it's hard for me to say, but like one of the ones that I was always a big fan of was $6 Million Man.
Oh,
And
they were supposed to do that with Mark Wahlberg, right?
they were. I think the problem with a movie like that would be that we have seen it already. Right? Because while the $6 Million Man was kind of original when it first came out.
Now we have Terminator. Even the Terminator is kind of like that. You
got Terminator. You got other people that have. Correct. You have all those things. So here, you mentioned RoboCop, and we'll finish with this. I mean, there's still a lot of movies that we haven't mentioned here.
Right.
So there's RoboCop. The biggest one that we haven't mentioned is actually the DC movies. So these are all the DC movies I didn't mention for very good reason, is because it's such a huge mess.
Snyderverse.
That would take its own podcast to just discuss everything that I think is going on wrong with that franchise, and why we as the audience are either sick of that franchise, but at the same time, like you said, we're like a battered person that wants to keep coming back because you're hoping that you're getting something good.
Better.
I mean, I just watched Shazam.
Yep.
And holy crap, that's bad.
And we are going to be tearing that apart on Panels to Pixels podcast.
Oh my God, I can't wait. So that being said, there's stuff like, again, there's RoboCop, there's that, there's a few others that I mean, there's a ton of them out there. And unfortunately, we've gotten a lot of crap. I mean, it's
hit or miss with a lot of stuff lately.
And again, it's a whole lightning in the bottle thing. I'll keep saying that. I should do a t-shirt on that. But it's a lightning in the bottle thing. You did it right the first time. You go ahead and now you want to exploit this film, but you do not do it the right way. You do not consult the people
pushing it into the ground. I think,
but you're not consulting. You're not consulting with the people who actually came up with the idea,
the fandom,
where it is supposed to go. I mean, when I see stuff like The Boys on Amazon, it's fantastic. When I see the Invincible, another. Well, it's cartoons, but it's still an amazing, because the ones that have control there are the actual original people who did the IP, right? And they're consulting with these people. Same thing with like Game of Thrones, where, George R. Martin is the one that was, being consulted. Granted that there were times that they didn't consult him, and that's how you knew that this show wasn't, doing very well. That's when they stopped. Same thing with The Walking Dead, I think, is the same thing, where like, in the beginning, I think, you got a few seasons that are great, but then after that thing just got, to me, I mean, there's a lot of walking.
Was in charge of that, and honestly, I think beyond that, Robert didn't really give a shit.
Yeah, and I just feel like it was the same thing it got to the point where it's like, all right, I've been seeing the same show.
It's called redundant. If you look under the dictionary, under redundant, it says C, redundant.
Yeah, no, that was just a bad. Well, for me, it was bad. I know there's a lot of fans out there for The Walking Dead. Are we tired of, do we think there's franchise fatigue out there? And honestly, in my opinion, in some cases, I think there is. And
for the general populace, I think there is.
Right. And I'm hoping that these studios can finally say, hey, listen, it's time for us to do quality instead of quantity. We're not in a pandemic anymore. And what we can do is, there's a lot of great artists, and there's a lot of great writers, and there's a lot of great people out there that have so much great stuff. Space it out, man. Just do, different things at different times. And it's like, hey, we did this, and 2 years later we went back to it, and people were like, oh yeah, I remember that. I want to see another one of those. And instead of saying, hey, let me put 3 of these a year. So I hope that these studios can finally start to see that, listen, the audience is smarter than you think. You're gonna make money off of these things if you do it the right way. Right? Putting out garbage is a guarantee for people to just say, okay, you know what? I never want to come back to this thing, and you kill it for the actual fans.
Or you wait for streaming.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Whether it's streaming
they're going to have to wait for streaming, and then they lose their money in the theater. And then
I hope the studios learn. I mean, I hope that the the executives up, up high, start to see this. And I'm hoping that Bob Iger does exactly what he said, which is would he rather do quality instead of quantity. So that being said, guys, I mean, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I want to thank everybody else there for hanging in there with us and hearing us out on this. And if you have your opinion, I would love to hear what you guys think about it. What do you think about these these IP movies and these franchises? Are we getting franchise fatigue? Are you guys out there already tired of a lot of the stuff that we mentioned? Let us know. So fantasy picks movie edition at gmail.com. And that'll be it. I mean, I want to thank Patrick. I want to thank Frank, and I want to thank Mark for coming on the podcast. And hopefully we'll talk to you guys next time. I think our next one is I forgot what it's going to be, but it'll be a good show too. So so very quickly, you guys plug your stuff in. Mark?
You can hear me on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast on Pyrocore Entertainment Network. Panels to Pixels Podcast.
Awesome. And you, Patrick?
I just got my art site, which is on, you can check out some of my artwork. It's Patrick Riley Art, and it's on Instagram. And I got my stuff posted on there. You can check it out if you want.
And Frank?
Here, buddy. Here.
Just here.
Just here.
If not, he gets invited to all the people's podcasts.
I have to ask Frank, because it's just so funny. He's always saying, I'm just here.
Well, he's going to be other places. He just needs to get in touch with me.
So
exactly right.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have social media, Frank? Any social media? You do? Anything they could find you on in case they want to, follow you or
stalk you?
I mean, you can always find me on
Instagram. You for a date
but...
because they need a cuddle buddy.
Yeah. They can find you where?
Instagram.
Well, what's your Instagram?
Fluffy Frankie.
That's how much I use it. I have no idea.
At Fluffy Frankie.
Frank Rodriguez. You literally...
All right, guys.
I'm going to change it to Fluffy Frank. You watch.
All right. That's our show for tonight. All right, everybody. You have a good one.